Welcome to the series finale of IET India's Walk the Tech Talk series Season 2 in association with India Automated. We have had 20 episodes in this season of Walk the Tech Talk that garnered more than 6,700 views. We had invited 20 national and international tech experts from various sectors such as logistics and supply chain, cybersecurity, manufacturing, agriculture, amongst others. The season saw some very interesting conversations around tech and had our guest speakers share their views on where India is headed, what challenges they see from the tech perspective in their respective sectors, and what recommendations they have for India to be able to up its game in technology. I present to you your host for this series, Mr. Pranjal Sharma, the author of India Automated, along with Mr. Shekhar Sanyal, country head and director of the IET in India, and Mr. Suman Bose, co-founder GoFar Growth Advisory and Investments, to talk about what's next for tech and how technology will continue to evolve and shape the future of businesses.
Thank you, Jani, and welcome to all of you for this season finale of Walk the Tech Talk, the second season. And we've had some terrific conversations, and I'm sure you've seen many of them. This time, we're going to be talking about, what's 2021 bringing us, not just in India but across the world, and the confluence of technology across borders. Thanks to both of you for joining. I think this conversation will be wonderful. Let's look at what's going to happen in the world, and we'll also talk about what it means for all of us as professionals, as entrepreneurs, as business leaders, as students, and see how can we prepare best. Of course, after 2020, everybody knows that you have to prepare for the worst, but also be ready to give your best. So let me begin with you, Shekhar. IT has a global footprint, and your own personal experience in looking at technology and how people are deploying it so closely across various sectors. What would you say is going to be happening in 21 across the world? Technology has really swept everybody.
Absolutely true. Thank you, Pranjal. Pleasure being here. So true what you're saying. Uh, Amongst all the usage of technology which has been happening in this 2020, essentially where we all have been pushed to work more closely with machines and with technology, some willingly, some kicking and screaming. But the fact is that humans are getting more comfortable with technology. And as they get more comfortable with technology, the demands of the experience that they get from technology is going to significantly change. And that, I think, will drive another round of technological advancements in 2021. Because now we are used to it, we've tasted blood. So we know how easy it is to get things using technology. And therefore, the demand for pushing technology and getting more outputs out of it, getting better optimal outputs using technology, whether it's on a B2B or a B2C system, is just going to accelerate. So to me, this is a pivotal point, 2020, where while technology was always there and was working, but a larger population of people will now be much more open to technology and start using it, which will push innovation much faster than it did in the years before. So the laws are going to get changed a bit.
Suman, what's your take?
Just continuing with what I think Shekhar said, it's a very important point that technology adoption obviously has picked up in many ways during the pandemic. But I also think that this was inevitable. So what the pandemic has done essentially is it has accentuated the inevitable. So things that have sort of fallen off the radar or gone off, but anyway would have gone off maybe in 3-4 years down the line. The pandemic made it go down, and some things which came up, maybe the time would have happened otherwise 4 years later is happening today. So in that trend, I would say 2 or 3 things we would see. We would see edge as a computing device will become very more important, because this, even in the best of the countries, people are today, there are timeouts that happen when you have a conference like this. And we always now these days keep our fingers crossed, despite having maybe a broadband to back up, that if the broadband would stay, if it falls, etc., etc. So you cannot just say, everything has to be connected and therefore it has to work. You will have to figure out ways, and we will. So that's the edge computing. So I would think edge would really take off. And then miniaturization of data pieces through embedded systems, embedded chips. And I think there will be a lot of technology that humans would start using, which we wouldn't even know that we are using technology. And it would be like literally invisible technology. Like, today technology is there in your food that you eat or the beverage that you are sipping in the morning. So that kind of. And the last but not the least on this thought trend is, AI will get dejargonized and will start getting itself embedded at the edge, in the front end, in the front tip. So whether you're doing simple attendance recording in school, the kids are just passing through and the camera is picking up who's passing through, so that you do not waste that time, precious time, to in the class to take your attendance. Or for example, when you're looking at gestures through a camera, a hidden camera into a cloud kitchen, and understanding what was that person actually cooking was doing. Was it even a hygienic practice? Gesture manipulation. So I think a lot of behavioral technology and a lot of AI will get into right into in the invisible mode. So people also will be watched. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. I think it's a bad thing. But let me make my position up over there. But whether we like it or not, we will be watched. And that I think that watching and surveillance and making things out of it. And therefore, in the initial days, people will make mistakes. People will interpret it wrongly, because at the end of the day, you've taught a machine for a certain gesture, and the machine doesn't understand it. It would err on the side of maybe doing wrong. So I think there would be some interesting times. And I just keeping my fingers crossed that I won't be hauled up on the wrong side of a gesture.
No, that's a great point, Shekhar. I'll come to you. You talked about behavior. I picked up two phrases recently. Gartner's prediction. They mentioned two phrases which were new to me. One is cyber mesh, which is really about security blanket, not on the organization and the enterprise, but really on individuals. So the security is revolving around the individual, irrespective of where he or she is. And the second was about Internet of Behavior, and I think someone was referring to that. So Internet of Behavior is about picking up everything which is happening around an individual, and then putting that together and stitching together some kind of a profile. And again, AI would be included in it, RPA would be included in it. So, do you see these phrases also becoming, it's not just about a phrase; it's also about the practice. Do you see, from Internet of Things that you've been talking about, Shekhar, at the IIT, it's going to be about behavior. It's going to be about keeping track of who's doing what.
Yeah, it is inevitable. And as Suman said, this is something that has got accelerated. We would have seen it a few years down the line. It's just got accelerated due to the pandemic. Especially if you look at the way the pandemic has been handled, using contact tracing as one of the biggest tools to handle the pandemic by healthcare professionals and governments. We invariably have entered that era where individual securities, as you said, and understanding how behaviors are being read, this is already in the process. I mean, in some countries, face recognition is being used in spite of masks to see whether people are, the behavior of the people within the pandemic, is it in the norm of way it should be, or are they out of behavior? Which I agree with Suman. Intrusion of privacy, the behavior analytics is something that has got a long way to go, but not something that I would like to be on the other side of. But hey, it's happening, and it will continue to happen and become more sophisticated as we go forward. And that will form a bedrock of how society will work in the future. So we cannot wish it away. There are huge benefits. There are some pitfalls as well. So we need to just make sure that we are careful, and IT will play a role in making sure that that is kept in that narrow channel, and we keep telling people what the pitfalls are. I also believe that this vaccine distribution, which we are getting into now, will be the world's largest coordinated logistics, data management, big data analytics exercise. It will be one of the world's biggest exercise where people across the world, organizations, governments across the world will come together to create this vaccine distribution. We have never seen something like this before. And this is going to throw up a whole lot of new technology challenges and outcomes. And The speed at which it has to be done is also another challenge. So there is a whole load of technology innovations, especially around the areas that you mentioned, which are going to happen in this next 5 to 6 months as the vaccine gets distributed.
So that's a stupendous space. I think, Shekhar, you've said a very important point, because just out of the process of delivering vaccine to 7 billion people across the world, I think the technologies deployed would have a cascading effect and impact and deployment in so many other ways. But Suman, the interesting issue which is also coming up at a global level, and then I'm going to talk about India, is tech nationalism, right? So there's competition between countries, not on economy and security and missiles, etc., which used to be. We're not looking at the Star Wars program anymore, where Russia and US counted their strengths on how many satellites and ICBMs they had. It's really about who has better technology, who has got a sharper AI, who's investing more. How is this going to play out in 21?
I think this is going to, as uh, difficult as a technology-minded person that it seems. Unfortunate part of this, the current state of affairs is that there will be this nationalist agenda that invented here, not invented here. But I personally think that the point that Shekhar raised will neutralize it a lot, because for even to do nationalism, you need space and time to do nationalism. But when you have to go and send in vaccine, for example, for 7 billion people, you'll have very little time and space. And by the way, Shekhar, the point which you raised is so important. Most of the biggest challenges in the world are essentially supply chain problems. Like, why do the world waste, $4 trillion worth of food every year, ready to eat food, and when 10 million people die in hunger, is actually a supply chain problem. So, and supply chain with economics. So I think that the problem of vaccination, because now it is the gun is on the head. It's not just the poorest of the poor falling off the precipice somewhere, but it is your and my family which is being impacted. So the other more benefited part of the world is waking up to and smelling the not such a good coffee. By solving this, I hope the other relevant issues of that supply chain work, to food, to education, to the basic tenets of human life, which is still eludes about 1.5 billion people in the world, will start trickling in, and not trickling in, maybe gushing in. But coming back to the point, Pranjal, you said, if you take I personally, as you said, we would have understand. I don't like the word nationalism. I'll accept it if it happens. But what I think will happen is there is also a reset button being pressed. Like the industrial revolution pressed a reset button, the the digital industrial revolution pressed a reset button, which America emerged, and now China has literally taken a lot of leaps and stands and gone ahead with it. The best AI brains today in the world, arguably, maybe actually sitting in China today. But this reset button, and it's a great advantage point of many countries like India, where you don't have to always, and India has shown that a lot of our services are not consumed in our country. So I think what will happen is we will actually be able to build something for the global supply chain. So this supply chain thing that Shekhar said, maybe a golden thread of that can come out of India, a golden thread of that can come out of France, a golden thread of that can come out of Nigeria. And I think these meshes will start making it much more a beautiful fabric. And I think I would hope, this is all staring at the crystal ball. I would hope that these, even if this so-called tech nationalism, but finally the fabric is an international fabric, because that's how technology have lived. It's boundaryless.
So let's come to India now, and I think that's a great way to shift gears and talk about the impact on India. And when I talk about tech nationalism, I'm looking at the positive side. I'm not looking at nationalism as a closing the border kind of effort, but really, Shekhar, the realization that every country, and especially let's talk about India, the policymakers, industry leaders realize that they have to invest in technology. We've had information technology revolution, but we've not had a technology revolution. Are we solving for India? Are we making enough effort? Now that I've always had this view that the fourth industrial revolution is perhaps a very egalitarian technology and industrial revolution, where everybody has almost equal access to the same kind of tools. So I mean, AI is not controlled by anybody, right? And in the 18th century, technologies were controlled by certain countries. So it's up to India to create the right kind of IP. It's up to India to create the right kind of solutions. It's for the policymakers to create the right kind of ecosystems. It's for startups and entrepreneurs and large companies to start, getting deeper into technology rather than just trying to follow what the global models are. So, do you see India now creating technology for itself?
I mean, the capability to create technology for itself has always been there. It is how do you make sure that the system and the the whole setup encourages that. So if you look at our Aadhaar stack, for example, we have created, or the UPI stack that we have created uh, is created in India. It is something that is using technology and is working very well from India. So I've got no doubt that we will be able to create the technology. What we will have to make sure is that there is climate for that. And that's where the governments have to step in. And I think at this point of time, with whatever is happening around us, governments have no choice but to step in. Customers, or you and me, are now asking for digital experiences which we have now got used to. This was probably not there. A large number of people were not used to digital experiences even 9 months back. Now, a significant number of them, even people on the street, are now getting used to a digital experience and the ease of getting things done using digital means. Therefore, the pressure will be on the government to start responding to that. And if they don't, then there is a whole set of fomenting of unrest due to the economic impact of the pandemic. And unless we are able to give experiences to our citizens which makes their life easier, and they've seen it happening through digital, we will sense a lot of pushback towards the government. So we have to make sure that that happens.
Your take on, what should now India do in terms of improving its capability?
I think Pranjal, here is my take. My take is, the crucible of the people, the largest chunk of people are sitting in India, and China, right? So I would take the Chinese experience. What China did was, in the 90s, it built technology for the world. And in that process, they had also solved its own problem and own issues. So I think this is an opportunity for India to, while yes, it is important that we do take this advantage of this technology right inside into our country, but we definitely take this opportunity and build technology for the world. And in that process, we are a biggest crucible of actually implementing and eating our own dog food. So if I build a technology that, say, for example, uses nanotechnology to solve particle separation, that can be worked across the slums in Rio de Janeiro. I mean, I have the largest, we have the largest slum sitting in Bombay and the outskirts of Delhi itself. So it will be, I have a crucible. We have a crucible to make it work in India. And then, so I think this India for the world, in my view, that should be the picture rather than saying India for India. Because if you're for the world, you obviously include yourself. And that's what China did. We saw the large part of the last 2 decades of the third industrial revolution. China picked it up from US and accelerated it. The US universities got filled with Chinese students. Their researchers were filled the US labs. They literally power today the US labs. And the Silicon Valley is powered today with Chinese nationals. And I think the same thing. And then they also took benefit back into the country. I think this is the time for India to say, India for the world. We are solving, because we also have those problems in our country. We are solving for the world. Let's solve for the world. And in that process, we will see a very prosperous India. I'm very hopeful on that. And there's an economic opportunity.
Absolutely. So, talking of hope, Shekhar, we in the season we've spoken to various experts. Global information systems have picked up a lot. Automation is there. Financial technologies have picked up so rapidly this year in 2020. If you also look at certain trends of use of automation, apart from that, IoT, there are several interesting technologies which are now becoming commonplace. Commonplace to the extent that it's now, I think, impacting every single individual's lives. And it's not just about work from home, because work from home is of course a result, but really what is driving it and enabling it is the real issue. So things like business cloud, rise of business cloud, right? The use of artificial intelligence in everything from our emails to our consumer needs. In your view, what are the two or three top technologies which will drive change in India? And I'm giving this background of a post-COVID world where we tended to adopt, we moved into a crisis mode, right? And both you and Suman know that how whatever happened in India and of course across the world was all right. How do we do and what do we do to just make sure that there is a semblance of normalcy? Let's just continue the journey. It doesn't matter if my car is broken down, I'll take a bike. If my bike is broken down, I'll run. So that's been the, and whatever tool was available, we slapped it together, put it together, and just moved ahead. Once this dust settles down, what are these technologies which you think will be here to stay? What are the you know behavior in enterprise behavior changes, especially with technology, which is likely to remain and change India Inc. forever?
So, Pranjal, I mean, I would like to divide this answer into two parts. One part is what the governance and the governments should do, and one part is what, as uh, industry should be doing, and what industry should be looking out for. I think at the genesis of both the reactions is, as I said, I've been harping about the fact that more and more people are getting used to a digital experience, and therefore suddenly doors have opened up to what they can get. I mean, if I want to pay my taxes, do I need to, which happened a few years back, I'm just taking as an example, I need not go and stand in those camps which used to happen. In Pragati Maidan, there was this big income tax camp where you used to go and stand in line and then spend the whole day giving your taxes. Not that, you just go online and just, it's a click of a button and do this. Now,
Right.
once I realized that this can happen, then I do not want to go back to where it was. And I think this year has managed to take a lot of people over the hump. And a lot of people, especially the non-elite, as we said, the people who do not work with computers, whose work does not involve computers, they have now realized that a lot of services that they get is changing. So whether they as buyers, as customers, or whether as citizens, they are realizing that things could change for the better because of using digital. And therefore, unless governments and organizations continuously study what what is the need and behaviors that their customers are doing and keep responding to it, there will be a pushback both in terms of the way the governments get treated, the way the citizens look at the government, and the way industries will be able to make money out of giving services and goods to citizens. So, therefore, at the crux of this is the human behavior change, and every technology which is focused around understanding behavior, human behavior, and how they react to it, which digital makes it quite easy, will start becoming more and more. I think we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of behavior analysis. There is a whole load of technologies which include what we have commonly heard: blockchain, AI, all those other things which are now buzzwords, which will, as Suman said, become invisible under the thing, and which always will be talking about doing monitoring that. I mean, I'll take one example, which is the contract tracing system. The contact tracing system by itself has been manualizing behavior of millions of people around the world, not just in India, and understanding there. At one end, we are looking at what is your contact tracing, how close you are to COVID. But beyond that, behind that, there is a whole lot of behavioral signals which the tracing app is picking up. Now, if you use that responsibly, then there is a lot of good you could do for the citizens and for the people. And as businesses, you can actually create ways to reach out to your customers, which will make it easier for them to buy and make buying decisions. So, my feel is that every technology which is focused on understanding human behavior in cyberspace will continue to grow, and we will see a whole lot of host of new technologies built around these which will keep coming up. You mentioned a few: cyber mesh. So these are few of the offshoots which will keep coming up, and I sense that's the path that we'll see.
So, Suman, I'm going to ask you a tough question, right? What are we going to discard? We adopted a lot of interesting behaviors, technologies, and structures in 2020. But what is going to stay on in 2021, and what are we going to discard? There's got to be a rebalancing. We suddenly lurch to one side, and we may not come back to the normal, but we'll come back somewhere in the middle. So what is that middle going to be? What are the permanent changes that we see in terms of usage of technology that will stay or accelerate in 21?
Yeah, my belief over here is again, just like Shekhar way he said that it's what the governments and the individuals, how the need will drive technology. It's when the need, if the need is not there, the technology shouldn't be there. So I think the need of the one of the thing that I have analyzed is this, we typically in the world in the 7 billion, if you see in a very macro, about a billion plus people have become very vulnerable during this. I mean, they suddenly, from being an economic consumer, are now falling off the economic radar, and across the world, a billion plus people. And I call this the vulnerable billion is the truth. There is a book that I read the other day which says US possibly is the emerging third world country. I mean, that's what's happening. The first world countries are looking up and looking at this dystopic future of becoming emerging third world. Now, fancy aside, this vulnerable billion is a large market because this still, despite being vulnerable, is about 5, 6, 7 trillion market. And then you slap in the bottom billion and etc. You have about 10%, 14% of the global economy available to serve through technology, whether it's supply chain now or whether it is to the cause. For example, if you can do work from home, can a doctor actually treat a patient in distance? So then you suddenly take healthcare to those 500 million people who are not having access to primary healthcare. Can you take, can you distribute food? We talked about food. Can you take education? We are seeing people are trying to come up with the various models around education. And education doesn't mean, replacement of coaching classes, actual education, that kind of things. We are looking at multiple livelihood options. So livelihood, I think, will drive technology. Finally, what is it? I, as a human, have to live, and I have a right to certain things that I need to live. And that's what's the definition of livelihood. So in my view, I would end by saying, I think new livelihoods will emerge. A lot more community-centric livelihoods would emerge rather than large enterprise livelihood. And these community-centric livelihoods are, again, large opportunities for countries like India, because India has always thrived in the communities, in the small communities. So if good governance, individuals, we can start doing this community engagement. It's literally like, a small CU in the car makes a Tesla so different from any other electric car. So I think that's the experience, I would say, from a socio-economic and technology being a driver for that CU to happen within our society. And that's where I think those are the technologies of permanence which you will see and last but not the least, sorry, I've forgotten, is multi-use of it. The technology that we are using to do a video chat today can be used for not just for conferences, but for or one-on-one calls, but it's also like for alumni reunions, or it's for a doctor talking to a patient, or etc. So multi-use, multi-purpose use, the shared rental model will become very, very important. People will not own assets, but will use assets.
So, I want to talk on the last point on this, on India.
If I may just add to something what
Sure, go ahead, Shekhar.
Suman, it is so, what you said right at the end of it, it is so true. In fact, only last week, I had a memorial meeting on a video platform for my dear departed father. And we were able to get his friends from across the world, friends and family from across the world, to come together on that, which would have never happened if this technology was not there. I mean, it allowed us to all sit down and reminiscence about him together, and we had a wonderful time. But it was only possible because this technology is available right now.
I think, Shekhar, it's not just about technology being available, it's about our comfort with its usage. These technologies were always there, but we didn't use it for personal use. It was, bucketed into one business-oriented activity. I'd rather go and meet somebody over coffee than, do a video call. So I think that as you rightly said, I think it's really that. On India, what I see as a very important development, and I'm hoping that it will continue, is the investment and the need for investing in the digital infrastructure. Now, all that what both of you are saying cannot happen at pace, at scale, unless you invest in that. And I think there are some encouraging signs of that. I mean, there's a talk of 300,000 Wi-Fi spots. There is a BharatNet program. There's investment in fiber optic technology. There is, of course, the most important one is we already have 750 million internet users in the country. I mean, it's the biggest in any open market democracy. But the rollout of 5G is the year is 2021 for 5G. A quick take from both of you on how 5G is going to enable, accelerate, and amplify everything that you're talking about.
I mean, there is 5G has been in the making for India for years now. I remember when we did our first IoT India Congress, we had the Secretary of Telecom come in and say that we are going to get 5G at the same time as the rest of the world, and it was big news. So we have been trying to ride the 5G bandwagon for.
So will 2021 be the year of 5G?
I hope so. I hope so. But I sense that the industry needs to rally around to get there. The opportunity is there. 2020, beginning of 2020, the industry was suddenly very despondent around 5G, especially with what happened with Huawei and US, and the ripples of consolidation of the telecom industry, which was happening in India. Companies were closing down. So I feel if the organizations which work around this area are able to forget their tunnel vision and start looking at it as a platform which will help everybody, then 5G will happen. But if they do not forget their old ways and continue to think of it as tunnels for themselves, then we are going to have patches where it will happen and a large part where it will not happen.
So 5G is a very important dimension of digital infrastructure, Suman. So it's really about India making sure that its digital infrastructure keeps pace with its aspirations and the widening and deepening use of technology. Because without the digital connectivity, everything that you talk about, from value chain to education to food security, that's going to fall flat, right?
Yes, but I would say that it's the if this pandemic has taught us, it has taught us the importance of planning for the widest reach rather than the best in class. I've stopped believing actually best in class. Maybe my post corporate life has taught me that there is nothing called best in class. It is what you're selling that is supposed to be the best in class, right? That's what the corporates do. Oh, my technology is the best in class. So let's start the best in class out and say, what does India need? Yes. Does India need roads? Yes. Does India need digital technology? Yes. Whether it is 5G, let's get first 4G across the country. Let's first find, it shouldn't be today. We have seen how people are standing in one corner of their house or on one particular area of their roof trying to catch a signal because everybody is kind of hogging signals. So my view is it's going to be a cost benefit analysis. And that cost benefit analysis, I'm not even getting into the healthcare concerns around high frequency 5G, etc., which many countries have raised concern. As you know, Europe, there's a lot of European cities which are blocking the applications of putting up the 5G towers, and I think those concerns have to be met because common people cannot be just taken for granted because autonomous cars have to rove the streets. We will have to first look at coverage. Let us get that data into the individual's hand at an invisible rate, maybe free, like water. If you're supposed to breathe free air and drink free water, which is a big question, can you drink free water? Can you get free internet? So I think that's the first. Once we solve that, whether it is thereafter question comes whether it's a telecom driven 5G or it is a balloon in the stratosphere beaming down internet, which is now a possibility. People are renewing, looking at VSAT as a technology to cover places. So I'm saying, why should I just box ourselves to say, oh, we will have to do 5G? I would look at every possible spectrum because finally my use is not 5G. It is, can that kid in the distant of Manipur get educated? Or can that farmer who's having an yield and not having the customer in Bengal get a customer? So that's the problem if I'm solving. Then I think technology should be invisible. And we should look at what is available, what asset is available, and find the most cost benefit optimized use of the asset. My belief is, yes, 2021 could be a start of a pilots of 5G, but definitely it is not the year of 5G.
Okay, so let's close on something about people. Final theme I want to discuss with both of you is about people. Shekhar, a lot of interesting developments in India. Space tech has opened up. A lot of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, have got into space technologies, and they're even thinking of they're creating manufacturing satellites to launch with in partnership with bodies like ISRO. So that's opened up. Defense tech has opened up. Suman referred to new kinds of satellite-based internet connectivity. That's opened up. We have seen weather technologies pick up. So automated weather systems are now becoming pretty common across in agri sector. Soil sensors are picking up. A lot of interesting new categories of technology and business industry inflection points are emerging. So while there is a lot of, and I want to, close our discussion on a positive note and a constructive note, that while a lot of worry is that technology is taking away jobs, I think there are also several new categories of possibilities opening up. And this is based on my conversations with everybody. Like just GIS alone, I know that companies involved with global information systems are working with student bodies, with academic institutions to start telling them what it means, right? Drones are just one symbol of that. So my question to you is that what do you think are the areas and the approaches that individual professionals, students, and even entrepreneurs should apply to make sure that they make the most of these opportunities which are emerging? Otherwise, if you don't have enough people again go back to technology. But you need to have the right skilled people to be able to make sure that they make themselves relevant to the new opportunities which are inevitably opening.
Right. Now, Pranjal, I couldn't agree with you more. The need for the right set of skills as we look at the future is extremely important. Has never been as important as it is today. However, woefully, our educational infrastructure is not geared up to impart those skills at this point of time, and therefore, so that's one side of the story: the traditional education infrastructure. On the other side, what has happened during this time is that the digital infrastructure around education of imparting new skills has suddenly exploded, and people are getting more and more aware of it. So, step one is that people should start moving away from educational, or not moving away. In addition to the traditional education, should start looking at adding to these skills using digital uh, avenues which are available to them, which lot of people are doing. As you can see, the Coursera's and the edX's of the world are just zooming up. So yeah, which a lot of people are doing. But again, beyond that, the whole question of applying this to real life situations is something that is still uh, missing in that link. And unfortunately, it's missing in our traditional education link also, because our whole way of imparting education is very theoretical. So at this point of time, I believe that organizations need, if they really want to utilize the talent, in conjunction with various bodies, will have to start looking at internship very, very seriously. Not as a tick in the box, but as something that they will have to really invest their efforts and times in to get people to come in and do internship. And to youngsters, to a bunch of youngsters who actually lost out a year this year, a large number of people who graduated in 2020 are probably sitting at home because the way things work, job market was not working, we were in a crisis. I would advise, go and get a free internship. Don't ask for money. Go and do something which will enhance your skills. The amount of experience that you will get in this pause period is invaluable. So just go and get a free internship, do that work, and get to learn more. As far as working professionals go, they will have to start learning these new skills. I'll give you an example of my wife. My wife is a teacher. right? She teaches English to class 10th students, and in the last 9 months, she has learned uh, how to use a computer to start off, which was never something that she was using before, to make PowerPoints. And then that is the second skill she learned. And then she's now adept at taking examinations and creating examinations over the internet and invigilating remotely when examinations happen. So these are new skills which you have to learn to survive. I'm just giving a very base example, but as non people who are non-technical, they have to realize that the future is joint work between human and machines. And if you do not work on understanding how machines work, and if you think it will work it's somebody else's job, you're going to be in trouble. So everybody needs to understand how machines work and what are the technologies behind those machines. So even if you are not using the technology, you should at least have an understanding of the technology and how it works. So that's very important.
Suman, you've also been learning a lot in your post corporate world life. As a founder, as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you've had a fantastic learning curve as well. How does what are the lessons in terms of for others that how do you relearn, how do you upskill? Because after 20-30 years in a career, or 10-15, depending on where you are on that curve, everybody thinks that they know enough. I think this whole process of saying that, look, I don't know enough, but more than that, how do I get back to school? How do you approach that? What kind of triggers should we apply to ourselves?
So this paradigm of you learn for a certain period of time and then you're supposed to work for 50 years is long dead. And this was this age-based cohort system 500 years back, and the kind of supply chain kind of a mentality of creating and people and then hoping that they will be able to apply it. So first of all, this concept of cradle to grave education or cradle to grave skills is important. You have to lifelong look at ways of dripping in skills into your own system and your ecosystem. Whether it is Shekhar's wife learning how to do PowerPoint, or my mother is learning how to use a WhatsApp because now she wants to talk to her grandkid using WhatsApp. So that's the kind of stuff. But on the deeper sense, businesses finally will have to sell their product to somebody. So I go back to it. If there's no money, who will buy their product? Who will buy their solutions? So job, just like we are trying to get the pandemic out of the door, creating job is a global challenge. It's a global livelihood challenge. And if companies think that I will try to automate and get my work done very soon, they will have to eat their digital dollars themselves. So the real money will not come into the bank because there will be no money to go around. So for companies, if there is no other time, you will have to, like you had a marketing department going and creating marketing demand for your organization. I will just take what Shekhar said. Instead of looking and saying that guys go and find even if it's a free internship, companies will have to create internship, because if they don't create, their products will have no takers in the future. So there has to be maybe a department on the other side, like a marketing department, whose job is to go and continuously create internship, continuously sieve through talent, let as much talent come through their gates and go out, big companies, small companies, and inculcate an ecosystem of trust, because you have to build that trust back by using technology. And I think this is a great time, because suddenly a lot of things are possible. People's barriers of acceptance have really become accessible. So use this time to build the momentum and create a new face of a company and say, for us, giving jobs is a priority. Creating jobs is a priority, not just, giving this old adage of customer satisfaction and we make tech work. So I think I'm just upping the ante for the need to create job, and especially like a country like India, like we gave tax advantages to people who did R&D in the 80s and the 90s. We need to give tax advantage to people who give internships. In Germany, the post-war Germany was entirely built. Japan was entirely built on the back of internships. So I couldn't agree more. This is as much a national and an international agenda on the creating jobs and livelihood, and there has to be a confluence of kinds of education, technology, and people to make it happen.
That's a terrific point, Suman. I think companies have to realize, and even the governments have to realize that technology is being used for efficiency in the end for whom? The consumer. the final arbiter of an economic resurgence is consumption. All growth is consumption-led growth. The moment consumption goes down, everything collapses. So I think companies will definitely have to look at ensuring that they're creating consumers rather than just catering to those who are there, because that lot is shrinking. And if that lot starts shrinking, that no amount of efficiency or cost reduction is going to help, because in the end, consumers are not increasing. And therefore, then you move into the whole welfare system, and that's not going to work for anybody. But I think in the end, what we can close on is that we will see tremendous changes in 2021, which we wouldn't have seen if 2020 hadn't played out the way it did. And I think a lot of responsibility of taking on 2021 and whatever it is going to offer to us is lying on us as well. I think it's also an individual responsibility. I think there is always a tendency to say, the company has to help me or the government has to help me. But I think the first line of defense is yourself. You have to really make that effort. But I think 2020 has prepared us in one way that we are ready for anything. We are open to anything. And with vigor and strength and a sense of, we are willing to be surprised now. It's okay that nothing worse can happen. So we've hit the bottom. So things will play out, and we are ready to take on whatever 2021 offers. Shekhar, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, Pranjal, Suman, I just want to leave you with one feel-good moment. So my son joined college this year. So he went into college amidst the lockdown. And I felt quite sad for him, because going to college means making new friends, getting new experiences. And here he was sitting at home in front of a digital screen and trying to do lessons. I was really feeling sad for him. Till I walked into his room one day and I realized that he has actually got a set of friends from his new batch of college. And about 6 or 7 of them are close friends. And the way they interact is they are constantly on a video platform like this right through the day. So they're actually bonding. They're doing the similar kind of things that you would have done in college. So they were digitally bonding. And for me, I never thought it was possible if you hadn't had the past social capital with such people. But they have actually created friendships off the ground, and they're continuing, and they're constantly in with each other. And the funniest was when I walked in, and nobody was talking. They were all on the screen, and he was listening to some music on his earphones. I said, "What's happening? Aren't you guys talking?" He said, "No, but we're just together. I mean, just like you would listen to music. Everybody is listening to their own music, but we are all together." So that to me was quite a heartwarming outcome of the situation that we are in, and probably tends to show how the future will be.
I think that's a great point, Shekhar. And I think
there's a beautiful saying by Richard Attenborough, right? Life will find its way. Beautiful.
Life will find its way in 2021, and it will be aided by technology. And I think our own mindset, which is now ready to try anything. I think that's the key message for 2021. Thank you both for joining us, and all of you who watched this season finale of Walk the Tech Talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.